good evening. Welcome to the Scene World video chat. This time, like the last times, from the Film Museum in Frankfurt. And today we have some very nice guests here. 3D Realms in person would be Mike, Fred, and Scott. Mike Nielsen, Frederik Schreiber, and Scott Miller. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Hi. And I'm very pleased to have Scott Miller this time in the call. He is referred to as an industry legend, actually. Hello, Scott.
It's all true.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about what your functions are. Frederik Schreiber is a vice president, and Mike Nielsen is the CEO. And Scott, you are also making, giving advice, I saw on the homepage.
Yes, that's true.
Actually, okay. Scott's title is just is getting upgraded to Chief Creative Officer, so and partner.
Breaking news! Scott is officially back full time with us, so that's great. So now the official title is founder and chief creative officer.
Wow, nice! Congratulations. So we invited you guys to talk a bit today about the history of 3D Realms and also about the new stuff coming up. So let's first start with the history part. So Scott, you are one of the founders of 3D Realms, actually.
Yes.
And I also read you pioneered in something like a shareware concept.
Well, yeah, I mean, this goes back probably before a lot of your listeners were even, playing games or maybe even born. But it kind of all got started in the 80s before the internet was even something, before that word even existed as far as I knew. This was back when you could do things online, but it was through bulletin board systems. A lot of people had their own little bulletin board systems with several computers acting as servers that you could log into and so on. And there was some big services like CompuServe and Genie and Delphi, and then later came along AOL and Prodigy, and you could log into these places, but they were sort of like self-contained little parts of the internet world. And again, this was before the internet was even like a term. So back in these days, people were distributing a lot of...
Oh, we lost you.
Yeah, Scott, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now
yes.
I can hear you, yeah.
So anyway, back in the late 80s, a lot of little authors, little independent authors were developing little handy utilities and even some smaller games that they were releasing online. But in the games area, no one was really making any money. And the issue is that people were releasing these games that, for one, they weren't very technically advanced, so they weren't really competitive with games that were being released in the retail stores. And also, they were releasing the entire game. And when I came along, I did this with a couple of my games where I released the full game, and it didn't really make me much money at all.
Okay, so this is why you came up with the concept of shareware, to actually offer people like a preview of the game before they bought the full version.
Right. Really, Apogee, back in the 80s when we first started releasing games, we were really the first game company to start releasing demos online. But we weren't calling them demos, we were using the phrase shareware, which was the phrase that was catching on in that time. And we'd release, like 1/3 of our game online. And in that game, we would have instructions on how to order the other 2 episodes. So we always release things like in 3 episodes. So that's kind of how the episodic model got born. Really, demos got started at that time. And it was funny, when we released our games this way back in the day, retailers or retail publishers would contact us and say, you guys are crazy for releasing so much of your game. But, for us, it worked. And, our first couple of big games were, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. Our first couple of big games were Commander Keen, which I see on the video now. And then we had Duke Nukem, and we had Wolfenstein, and these games, we were releasing the shareware demo, and people were just sending us money in the mail or calling our 800 number, and it really kind of took off as a way to sell games. And it allowed companies like us and id Software, and then Epic came along and sort of used the same technique, and so all three of our companies in the early 90s really took off because we were using this pre-internet model of releasing demos online, and those demos would sell, the full game.
An interesting thing is here to mention from the early interview. I remember that Mike actually told me he was one of those retailers, and he worked on publishing such games from 3D Realms with his father together, right?
That is correct. Yeah, my dad came from the film industry and saw, just like Scott, I think, but probably in a much smaller scale, that the gaming was really on the rise. So he found a way to access these, bulletin boards through me. He would buy me a modem, and then we would sit and download these games from the US on a crazy expensive minute price, because we were calling from Denmark to the US, and then it was not the most stable line, so you could risk having downloaded half the game and have to start over, and a download could take 6-7 hours back then, even though the games were very small in size compared to what we know today. So it's weird to be in a position where we now work with Scott at 3D Realms and the old Apogee, because it's been such a big part of my upbringing.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Scott, when you did that shareware concept and so on, did you actually consider what people do abroad the US? Or did you only have the American market on the focus back then?
No, we knew that these games were selling worldwide. And that's why we actually made a pretty good effort to work with sort of resellers in other countries, because we knew that people weren't going to call our number, it would be long distance for them, and they weren't going to send a check overseas, because that would take a lot longer for them to get their game and so on, and they might see that as kind of risky. So we knew we needed to have partners in other countries, and so I actually flew to Europe back in the early 90s and met with several partners and established sort of relationships and so on. That way, people like in other countries like England, they would call a local number to their country rather than having to call our number, or they could send a check to a local company rather than send it across the seas to our company and so on. So, we knew that the world market was important. Even back in those days, we kind of understood that, the United States was about 50% of the total market, and the rest of the world was the other 50%. So, that other 50% was very important to us, and we tried to make sure that, those customers could order the game too.
Ah, it's interesting also from the beginning to now.
One real quick thing. In fact, if you go back to some of these older games and look at the screen where we actually talk about where you can order the game from, you'll see addresses from several other countries to make sure that people in these other countries would have local places to order from.
Oh yes, that's true. Actually, I remember.
It wasn't just our local American address in there. We had, all these other addresses in there.
Ah, nice. Well, as I already said once in an interview, that also my parents got me such a CD when I was a small child, so I remember what you mean about those addresses, yes. And so it's also interesting. So it's some kind of early demo, and you could see what you get before you get the full game. That's quite good. So did you know back then, Scott, that you were pioneering in a new field when you started the shareware concept?
Kind of, because we knew that we were the first company doing this stuff, I mean, we didn't really think it was all that big of a deal, but I mean, we knew we were onto something because before we came along and used some of these techniques, there were some other pretty popular games in shareware, and I would contact the authors of these games, and they would have really sort of sad stories about the fact that even though their games were at the top of these charts and so on, they weren't making any money at all. And so, I actually recruited some of these authors and said, look, we'll fund your next game, but we're going to do it the Apogee way till we break it down into these episodic, break it down into a trilogy. And that's actually how I get to work with some of these authors at the time. And they ended up making a lot more money working with us, even though they were splitting the revenue with us, versus just doing it on their own. So, we knew we had a really good model because it was making a lot of money. I mean, especially when we released Duke and then Wolfenstein, like everyone at id Software was buying a Ferrari and so on. I mean, it was really a very successful model, and so yeah, I mean, it worked for us. It seemed like every company who did it was working for them.
Interesting thing is, actually 3D Realms, if I remember correctly, was a name for Apogee Software for the 3D title. So actually you started with other games like Commander Keen and Wacky Wheels.
But yeah, Apogee was the original name that I came up with back in 1986, I think. And in 1994, I decided that we needed a whole new label or name to sort of account for the quickly emerging 3D market of games. It was obvious that 3D was the future back in those days, and I wanted to have a new name that represented the fact that we were really going to focus on 3D games going forward and make that our priority. So after we developed Apogee, Duke Nukem and Shadow Warrior and Terminal Velocity and our 3D games started coming out through that label. And the Apogee label started to fade off because those sort of 2D style games, they weren't making near as much money as the 3D games. So it wasn't really a priority for us to continue with that. So Apogee kind of faded away and 3D Realms kind of took over.
There's actually a question in the chat, Sven just told me.
Yeah, hi guys again. There is a question from Comprisma, and we showed speedrun from Commander Keen right now, and the question was, do you plan a new Commander Keen? And he guessed that it will sell pretty well.
The new Commander Keen is coming out in 3 months. I'm just kidding. Actually,
yeah, thank you. That was an official announcement. Thank you very much.
Well, I think
one of the things that we
Fred
did
said
as
something
sort of
about that back then when I asked him the same question.
Well, one of the things that we did as a publisher back in the day, one of the ways that we sort of worked with all the people we worked with, is that we did not take ownership of the game properties. So, like when we worked with id Software, even though like we helped fund these games and so on, we didn't actually have any ownership of the IP. In hindsight, looking back, we probably should have, had some ownership in there. But back in those days, we didn't really think it was important. We never thought that games would have sort of like the long lifetimes that they turns out that they had. Who would have thought that they're still making Wolfenstein game to this day? 20 years after the first one came out. So back in those days, whenever we made a deal with an author or a studio, we always let them keep all the rights. And so when it comes to Commander Keen and those kind of games, those rights remained with id Software, and then those rights were transferred to Bethesda when Bethesda bought id Software. So we have nothing to do with making more Commander Keen games, unfortunately. Otherwise, you can bet we would be doing it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, on the other hand, you actually managed to release an anthology. So you got the right of republishing Commander Keen and some of the other games.
Well, we always maintain the right to publish the games that we originally came out with. So, but the issue is that we can't go and make sequels without getting permission from these original authors. I don't know, Mike, Fred, do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, it's like the anthology itself is a great example of, when we took over, we wanted to make sure that every single game in the history and legacy of Three Realms and Apogee was available for everyone, for all the popular platforms of PC, Mac. We also wanted to make sure that they were compatible controllers and so on. But yeah, Three Realms always retaining the distribution rights for all these games digitally. And when we took over, we thought that the first natural thing would be to create this epic collector's edition where if you're a fan of games from the 90s, this is the pack for you. It is literally the definitive collection of many games that defined many genres in the 90s. You have everything from Wolfenstein that defined the first-person shooter genre, or invented it, and Duke Nukem 3D, which revolutionized it. You have the same with Commander Keen games, platformer, which is was at least it was the Super Mario of PC. That was what Commander Keen was back then. So that was the first natural step for us to create an anthology with everything in it.
What would interest me, actually, you mentioned it, games from the 90s. I remember my server version of Duke Nukem was actually called Duke Nukem or something. What's that reason of the name change?
Well, that happened because, when we came up with the name Duke Nukem, we didn't realize that there was a cartoon character in a TV show that was also called Duke Nukem, and he was a bad guy in this TV show called
Captain Planet.
Captain what?
Captain Planet, was it?
Oh, that's right, Captain Planet. Anyway, so the producers of that TV show contacted us and said, we can't be using Duke Nukem, and so we panicked and we changed the name to that slightly different spelling. And but then we contacted an attorney, and that attorney, worked out a deal. It took probably 6 or 8 or 10 months to work out a deal with that TV show to where we could go back and use the original spelling, the N-U-K-E-M versus the N-U-K-U-M. So there are versions of Duke Nukem out there, Duke Nukem number 2, that I think use the N-U-K-U-M spelling, which we had to do for that period of time until we kind of worked through the legal mess that was involved. And, eventually the producers of Captain Planet realized that our Duke Nukem wasn't anything like their Duke Nukem, and it was in 2 different areas of media. They were in the TV show area, we were in the video games area, and so they felt pretty confident that there was going to be no confusion between the characters, and so we were able to go back to using our original spelling, and we all had an agreement in place where everyone was happy with it, and so that's pretty much that story.
Nice. Cool. So let me ask the 2 guys who actually took over the company. You were hopefully a big fan of Duke Nukem and all the other games?
Yeah, like Duke Nukem was, for me personally, Apogee and the games released by Apogee and Three Realms was basically what defined my youth and my adulthood as well. When I was a kid, I had an NES. I played Super Mario and all the classic NES games, Castlevania and so on. But it wasn't. I think I was 7 when I got a PC and a box of shareware games from Mike's father's company, Euro Power Pack, which sold shareware games in convenience stores, grocery stores, and so on, supermarkets. And then I was introduced to all these games, and all I knew about in PC gaming was Wolfenstein, Commander Keen, Wacky Wheels, Blackstone, Rise of the Triad, and then of course Duke Nukem. And I was used to, every month or so, I would get a new shareware game on a floppy disk. And I would put it in, I would type // I would type install.exe. I knew all the things, but I couldn't really write or spell yet because I was so little, but I knew what to type on the keyboard. And that kind of stuck to me. Like I installed Duke Nukem 1, 2, 3D. And then when I grew up, I was, as everyone else, was highly anticipating everything from 3D Realms because I grew up with 3D Realms. It was like, anticipating the next Super Mario game. Max Payne came out, which was one of the best games of all time. Prey came out, which is also an absolutely incredible experience. And I was, as everyone else, waiting for Duke Nukem Forever. But the difference, I think, for me was I was so extremely passionate about everything 3D Realms because that is what I grew up with. It is everything I knew from a kid. And I actually got my start in video games making a Duke Nukem project. I actually reached out to Scott back in 2010 when I was done with my education or nearing the end of my degree. I reached out to Scott and I made a small little prototype of a remake of Duke Nukem 3D. And Scott and Gearbox gave me a right to do an official remake of Duke 3D, and I think around 6 months into that, I assembled a team and so on online working on this project. And then, most people know this story. We decided to cancel the project after some difficulties with Gearbox, but it opened up to a lot of other things. We were granted right to work on Rise of the Triad, which became our first official product. And the reboot of Triad is the I can hear myself. It's a lot of echo.
Okay.
But yeah, Triad was, as many know, was the last first shooter done as Apogee, and Duke 3D was the next, which was the first 3D Realms with the 3 of us label. But Rise of the Triad was the first IP we got to work with commercially, and we established the company Interceptor. We did the reboot of Rise of the Triad, which was in 2013. And me personally, I felt that this company that I created, all these wonderful people working with, we were almost carrying the torch because this was the first official game from a 3D IP since Duke Nukem Forever. Turns of events happened, and we were working on our next game, and then the opportunity to acquire 3D Realms presented itself, and to work closer with Scott and all the amazing people at the original 3D Realms that were still around, like Joe Siegler and Brian Turner, for instance. It for me it was a dream come true, because besides having helped bring back some of these titles and do a brand new game based on an old 3D Realms IP, getting to helm it and look forward in what we should do in the future is quite an experience. And I know it's the same for Mike, having a father who sold these games. It's pretty cool actually. It's something that we really enjoy. Mike?
Yeah, just like Fred, I mean, I got my first. They were part of my first games that I ever played, and they were also part of my first experience of running, being part of being part of a startup company, my dad's startup company. And I would, when I got back from school, I'd work at the warehouse, help package these games, help ship them out. Basically just do whatever I could, because it was fun, and paid an allowance, which was important to me at that time. So yeah, for me, it's sort of been gaming since I touched it back then has always been part of my life. After my father passed away many years ago, like 13 years ago, and immediately after, my brother and I, started our own company. And originally we wanted nothing to do with games. That was the original idea when we started Cool Shop. We're also actually now present in Germany. Cool Shop DE has launched not too long ago. And then we wanted nothing to do with games at that time because we didn't want to do the same thing as our dad did. But within half a year of starting the company, we came back to games and we found out that's where our hearts were and that's what we knew. And that's how we started Cool Shop, which is today present in I think 6, 7, 8 countries in Europe and employing more than 50 people, shipping out thousands of orders every day. It's not only games anymore. It's a very big shop who does almost everything like Amazon, but it's founded on games. And from there, I then met Fred when I stepped down at Cool Shop. I met Fred, and he was working on a cool 3D realms project, and one thing led to another, and the rest is history, as they say.
So I see Scott in 3D realms and so on really influenced a lot of lives actually this way. Interesting. Actually, your community manager Joe Ziegler, he sent us some pictures to show from back in the 80s. So maybe let's show them. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we can talk a bit about the pictures.
Archivist.
Exactly.
So okay, we have some pictures here, and I'm very interested in to what you have to say.
So this right here is actually from the hotel room when we showed off the first 3D realms game since Prey. I actually think like 3D realms themselves published them, and this is the bombshell official reveal. I think we're waiting around for the first journalist to show up. It's a very private first showing of the game. We had a hotel suite in that was in San Francisco, yes. Where we had journalists come from morning to evening every hour or so to see the first demo and trailer of the game. And here we have this is our former marketing director Becky Taylor, and here's Scott Miller. And we're just waiting around for the first ones to show up.
So it
yeah, you can come please, Scott.
Well, this is the shirt that the whole company went to go see the Phantom Menace, and just based on the trailers, we could tell that Jar Jar was not going to be our favorite character in the Star Wars universe. So. Before we went to see the movie, we had these shirts printed up, and this was the front of the shirt. And so there was like about 25 of us in line to see like the opening showing of Star Wars, and we were all wearing the shirt. And I just remember everyone was coming up to us and saying, "Oh my God, where can I get that shirt? Can I buy that shirt? Are you guys selling that shirt?" So yeah, this was before we even saw the movie, we knew that Jar Jar was not the character we were wanting to see in a Star Wars movie.
I think he was none of any Star Wars fan favorite. So yes, I love this shirt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So this is this is actually. This is at PAX Prime in actually a couple weeks ago in Seattle, where we had our last presence at trade shows this year. This is at PAX Prime, where people are playing Bombshell for the very first time. We had a little pre-show at QuakeCon, which is that's from QuakeCon. Another picture, you could also see Bombshell's ARM Amiga in a full one-to-one replica, which was pretty cool. This is also from QuakeCon, where that was the very first time ever anyone got to try out Bombshell in the public. Very amazing event for us. We got some great reactions. We were pretty much the only game there besides Doom and Fallout 4, and then it was primarily just hardware vendors. So we had a great show there.
Yeah, QuakeCon was great.
I wanted to say, Bombshell is your new IP. Is it based on some known universe like Duke Nukem or any other game that influenced you?
It's actually a brand new universe. Basically, we're with Bombshell. We're trying to create this epic storyverse where the game takes place. We're also doing a prequel to Bombshell, which also takes place in that universe. But actually, Bombshell was thought of all the way back in the mid '90s as the sidekick to Nukem. She was supposed to get her own game later on, and you know, everyone knows the history. There unfortunately was another game after Duke Forever, but when he wanted to make a new game, he actually wanted to create the female protagonist, and the Bombshell name was there, and it actually fit the character quite well. So we decided to bring it back, but it doesn't have anything in common with the original concept of Bombshell, besides that she likes, you know, bombs and explosions and so on. But yeah, yes, Scott, you might be able to give a little backstory on the original idea from Bombshell.
I just really want to say that obviously, you know, I'm not that much involved in the development of the game. I'm more on the business side, but it's clear to see that these guys, you know, everything is original, but of course heavily inspired by our upbringing, clearly. So you will see references in there to, you know, popular culture, because we're such, you know, we're kids of the popular culture pretty much. So yeah, and Scott, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, you guys covered it. I mean, Bombshell was an idea we came up with back in 1976 or 77. Actually came up with the name after watching the Pamela Anderson movie called Barbed Wire, and I was thinking, you know, there's not really a character like that in video game, you know, in the video game world. So a couple weeks later, I came up with the name Bombshell, and then we came up with the idea of, you know, how can we really make her stand out as something different? And so we had the idea of, you know, what if, you know, she's an explosive expert, and she lost her arm, you know, in some accident, and now she's got this, you know, sort of bionic cyber mechanical robot arm that is upgradable and stuff. And anyway, so we had this sort of nugget of an idea, and for a time we tried to blend it into the Duke Nukem universe. Then we took her out, and she's been kind of sitting on the sidelines for years and years and years. And so after Fred did, his company did Rise of the Triad, you know, we were talking to him about what other projects we can do, and one of the ones that I presented to him was the idea of Bombshell, and eventually that's the project that, you know, is now, you know, about to be released here in a few months. And you know, Fred's team, you know, took this very simple idea and really expanded the whole universe around it, and you know, now it's a much richer, deeper story than we ever had it back in the old days. And you know, I'm really excited about, you know, the direction it's gone. It's, you know, it's better than I would have ever hoped it would have ever turned out to be. And so yeah, you know, I think that we're launching a character here that is going to live on, I hope for decades. You know, if we do it right and keep the quality up and everything, there's no reason this can't be an ongoing character that you know, the gamers fall in love with and look forward to each new, you know, release.
So actually, there's a question in the chat. Sven told me.
Yes, and that is a question. I think you don't have to ask 3D Reels, but because we know the answer. But I will ask it because it's a user question. He's asked for a release date for Bombshell.
When it's done. No, Bombshell will be out this year. So later this year. You know, I used to hate the "when it's done" joke. I used to laugh at it. Well, I was a member of the 3 Rooms forums for as long as I can remember, and you know, all the "when it's done" jokes just still crack me up. But you know, we're aiming to release it this year, so we're very, very close. We're just doing the final polish of everything. Actually, right now, just between these interviews, we're actually sitting on the computers behind, and we're just crunching through bugs and polishing the game and so on. We just had Scott here for a week together with our VP of marketing, Josh, to help. Josh is in the chat as well. Say hi, just when we just went through a ton of stuff in the game. So that's what we're doing now. It's iteration after iteration to make sure it's as polished as possible and as fun as possible when it's
Yeah. So I think if you get $1 for every it's done joke, you can buy all the licenses back to 3D Realms and make some more games of it. Thank you.
So actually, if you say it's getting released this year, hopefully we will have it under our Christmas tree.
Oh yes, you will.
So you are working together with Santa for the distribution.
I think there's a lot of echo from your side as well.
Could be Scott sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. So do we actually have more pictures to show?
Yes, we do have more pictures, and I will give them.
Well, you guys had a good picture that we didn't talk about. The one with
one just before.
we're back in the hotel room, and Tom Hall was part of that picture.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we start again
Tom Hall,
with
the
first
creator of
pictures.
Commander Keen
and have this one,
you,
Jaja, and I think we stopped here at the alien.
No, keep going.
There we
it is.
go.
This one?
Yeah, that's Tom Hall, the creator of, you guys know your Commander Keen, co-creator of Doom, Wolfenstein, also the mind behind the original Rise of the Triad, and at Ironstorm he did one of the most underrated and most fantastic games ever made, Necronox, and a ton of other games. Yeah, you know, Scott.
Talk about Tom.
He did Equinox too?
He was the mind behind an Equinox. He is the Kojima of an Equinox.
That's interesting because just some weeks ago I had an interview with the leader of the development of the new Equinox, Deep Descent. So this memory is kind of fresh for me. So this is why I asked. Quite nice.
Okay, we need Scott on this one.
Oh yeah.
Scott, you.
All right. Well, I mean, this is like this goes back to probably 1992. I'm guessing, and so I'm going to go from left to right. Where that's George Bassard with the dark hair. Well, God, both ends have guys in red shirts. And then next to George is Todd Repogel in the blue shirt. So that's the direction I'm going. He is the co-creator of Duke Nukem. And he actually retired after Duke Nukem 3D. And I've actually spent years trying to get back in touch with him, and I've never been able to get back in touch with him. But then the guy in the background, I'm not sure he was in our tech support department. Then the woman in the purple is my mom. And the woman next to her is George's mom. So they were working at the company answering phones and taking orders for a long time. And the person behind George's mom is my brother. He was taking orders. Next to him is Sean Green. He was my first employee ever. He actually would come to my house before I had an office and start taking orders. And Sean went on to work at id Software, and he's still in the game industry. Then the really goofy guy next to that is me. And then behind that person is Gerald Lindsley, and he wrote our first 3D engine that, God, what did we use that for? Well, he also wrote he wrote 2D engines for us also, and we used it for like Monster Bash and a couple other games that he was involved with. But he was sort of our first engine guy, and he was working on a 3D engine, and he had to end up leaving the company for personal reasons. But that was our first sort of our engine guy. So this is like, very early sort of. I mean, there's a lot of people. There's a couple of people that are missing from here, like Stephen Blackburn. But this was like an early shot of Apogee and the people who worked at our original office space in Garland, Texas.
So you mentioned a lot of your family members in the picture, so it was actually a family business kind of at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, even my father at one point worked for us. You know, I had to end up firing them all at one point or another. But yeah, they were all there, you know, to help out in the early days. I mean, you know, when the way things kind of took off, you have to grab whoever you can as quick as you can, and families, you know, right there to help you when you need them. So they actually did a lot of good work for us in the first couple of years. Now this was we had the Apogee Olympics, and God, the guy winning the race here. This was like a 100-meter race, and the guy winning the race is Trammell, and he's now like one of the lead designers at Cliff Blazinski's new company, Bosky.
He's the art director on Lawbreakers.
Yeah, he's working on Lawbreakers. He's one of the top guys there now, and I can't recognize who the next.
He designed Pitfall. Actually, that's a pretty good note. You know, Pitfall from Fallout. He's the designer of that.
Yeah, he's a top artist, and you know he's an art lead now. And we had a 100-meter race, and I don't recognize the next two guys, and then that's me trying to I'm fourth place, you know, struggling to try and keep up with these guys.
So did only 4 attend, or?
So here we have the Halloween party, and this probably goes back to, I'm thinking about 1994, 1995, and like on the very right here, you see Frank Madden, who wearing like the polka dotted shirt. He's like the lead designer of the game Monster Bash, and so he's dressing up as his Monster Bash character. Yeah, and so yeah, just the Halloween party. That's being goofy.
Oh yeah, this is our. This is back in 2012. This is the reveal of Rise of the Triad at QuakeCon. We were so lucky that we had a great connection with Todd Holland, the CEO of id Software. He joined id in '97, I think, like right around Quake 2, and has had a long relationship as well with Three Realms. And we were actually the very first game ever to be presented on stage that was not an id Software title. It was usually only reserved for, you know, Doom 3 and Rage and so on. There were more titles. And Rise of the Triad was the first game to be revealed at QuakeCon that was a non-id title. And we actually revealed the trailer on stage, and then there was this booth that was all covered up, and that was where you could actually play the game for the first time in 6-player deathmatch. So that was the very first time Interceptor ever had a public game at a trade show.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. What made you decide to re-release or reboot Rise of the Triad? Actually,
well, there's actually it's actually a great story. When we canceled the production of Reloaded, we spoke with Apogee, Trader Arms, and there was a few titles we could pick between that were still owned by Apogee and 3D ROMs, and that was like games like Shadow Warrior, Rise of the Triad, for instance. We decided to pick Rise of the Triad. That's a game that we loved, the original one. It's a cult classic. It invented literally jibbing in shooters. It invented rocket jumping and the mouse look and so on. So it has a lot of inventions that you can give that game credit to. And the absolute insane nature of the game was just very appealing to us. It's basically almost a clean slate. We could make it as crazy and wacky as possible, and it would still be true to its origins, because it is a game by Tom Hall, who is crazy and wacky by nature. And we could also stay true to all the crazy weapons and so on in the game. It was just a hilarious game to work on. I think, mostly just because it was a ton of fun. It's a great little game.
Actually, I noticed recently you have a lot of fun at 3 Realms, because recently you announced Mike for the first time playing Rise of the Triad on Twitch.
Oh, yeah, no, actually, that was playing Deus Ex. But we actually had an intern in here. We got this intern, programming intern, just turned 18, and he had never played Half-Life, Doom. He rarely knew what any of these games were, but he was a game programming intern. He also never watched any movies. He didn't see The Matrix. He didn't know what it was. Like Rambo, Terminator, Star Wars, never seen any Star Wars. And we were just mind blown, like, holy cow. There exists a person out there who's a nerd who doesn't know what Star Wars is, or Duke Nukem, or any of these other games. So we saw this amazing opportunity to, every Friday, we would have him live stream playing these games, in front of the world. Like, there's this person who never played any games, so let's just, have him play, Duke Nukem 3D, Rise of the Triad. That was a pretty cool experience, because watching someone who, he played Call of Duty and Halo and so on, but watching someone play this for the very first time, and then when he was done, hear what his thoughts were, that was incredible. He was mind blown. Like, he thought it was one of the best games he ever played. And we asked him, well, it's from '96, right? Well, he didn't. He saw that the textures were kind of blurry compared to modern games, and the sound quality was not as high. But other than that, he wouldn't have known the difference. He actually thought it was more clever. It had secret areas. It had multiple ways to get to the goal, and he had to actually strategize his attacks and so on. So that was quite an incredible experience. And now Mike is one of the people who never played Deus Ex. I don't know if you actually ever heard about it when.
Yeah, well, I had heard about it mostly because of Cool Shop, where we sold a lot of games. It was on the shelves there as well. I just never played it. For some reason, it went. When I started working at Cool Shop, I didn't have a lot of time to play, so I've had a long period of time where I've only played very few games, to be brutally honest. And Fred came up with an idea recently here at the office, what we're going to do, because we're working extremely hard. The team is crunching, really, really long days every day. So we've introduced something we call a play day, basically, where we take a few days every month, and we use those for playing games or for watching videos. So the point of the days is to have fun, but to also have fun that is relevant to the business we're in. So our first play day, they sat me down and started me off on Deus Ex.
Oh, we started playing first Super Mario Brothers.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
we had a night at my place where we made a traditional Danish food for Scott and Josh, and then for some reason we got caught up in Super Mario Brothers 3, and we just couldn't let go.
Yeah.
Until it was very late, so we wanted to finish that up.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Yeah.
and then we sat Mike down to play Deus Ex for the first time, and
I have to say I played only the first Statue of Liberty mission, freeing the agent there and catching the terrorists. And getting him to turn himself in, and I have to say my mind is already blown by this game. Amazing game. I can't wait to get back and hopefully have time to stream a little more from it. But we're in a deep crunch right now due to our.
It's like, do you want to finish Bombshell or do you want to play Deus Ex
and Super Mario
and Super Mario Bros. 3? It's really hard to decide between those options. But we gotta go for Bombshell.
Yeah.
How is it for you, Scott, by the way? Because when I was at Gamescom having a booth, I explained like 1,000 kids what it is CAD is, because they only know it as a saving symbol. So for you being a veteran in the video game industry, how do you see how things develop, or newer gamers not knowing the past games or past technology?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, I feel like, like when I grew up, there was like a lot of movies that came out before my time that I still haven't seen. I haven't seen Gone with the Wind yet, and that's supposed to be one of the best movies ever. So, it's hard to catch up. It's hard to catch up on a lot of these things that were before your time, so to speak. I've caught up on a lot of older movies, a lot of black and white movies, and I really appreciate them. But you have to sort of appreciate them for the time they were made in. And I kind of feel it's the same way for games. A a lot of the older games don't hold up in lots of ways, but at the same time, they have lots of things that nowadays you don't really see in a lot of games. Like Fred was saying, back in the 90s in the first-person shooter genre, it wasn't just such a linear experience. It was more like a hub experience to where you were going back and forth to your level. You could find all sorts of secrets and stuff. And so, even though the graphics aren't up to par and so on, these older games have a lot of stuff that you don't find in the newer games anymore. And the reason is because in the newer games, developing content takes so much more time. It's so much more expensive that it's not really feasible to add in all these extra pathways and secrets and so on, because literally adding these things in takes, several millions of dollars. And back in the old days, a game like Duke Nukem 3D wouldn't even cost $1 million to make. That game only cost us maybe $500,000 to make. So just the expense of making games nowadays means that a lot of these sort of fun aspects of games that you could do in the old days, you don't see them nowadays. What I really like though is that, thanks to Steam and Xbox Live and other places now, and Humble Bundle, you can go back and experience a lot of these older games for very cheaply, and with the emulators and so on. So I always try to tell people go look at like a top 50 or a top 100 list, and try and play some of these older games like Mike is doing, like with Deus Ex. Go back and play some of these older games. You'll be surprised at just how fun they are, and it's a different experience than you're going to get nowadays. So, I'm not saying that the older games are better. It's just that there's a difference, and it's like a trade-off. We've got a lot better graphics and so on nowadays, but back in the older days, you actually had, I think, more gameplay.
And back in the old days, you could take bigger risks as well, because the market wasn't so saturated. Which is why, we were actually, Scott, we were watching together, we were watching pictures, and that's one of the things that I realized. We were watching pictures from, private photo album from 3-year-old's trip to E3 98. And looking at the show floor, I did not see a single sequel. Each and every single game on the entire show floor was brand new games. Like not only brand new games, but brand new IPs. There was only like Duke Nukem Forever was there, obviously a sequel to Duke 3D, but you had Prey, you had Max Payne, and also all the other studios there presenting games were original IPs. And then when you look at E3 this year, it's mostly only sequels. There's only very, very few. Only a handful of very few games that were actually brand new IPs. And I think that's the difference. Like back then, every new game almost had to be a new thing, a new risk, a new revolutionary idea, compared to today, where you just want to make sure that it's a safe bet by creating a sequel to an already successful franchise.
Was that who was that on the picture before? Was that Alan Blum or?
Oh yeah, that was Alan Blum, the other co-creator.
So, do you actually play games from other companies? As you said, reboots are kind of the thing this year. For example, recently Sierra came up from the ashes and re-released a reboot of King's Quest, I think it was. Or no?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not a reboot. It's a new game. It's no reboot. Yeah, it's just a new game under the name King's Quest, and it's I like it. It's a really cool adventure.
So maybe I should play it then. So do you actually play games from other companies like adventures, or are you more like kick-ass action games?
We play all kinds of games, like literally every kind of game you can imagine. We're so diverse, but I think when we're making games, I think we're all, the cool thing about us, being who we are, is that the entire team, almost all of them, have the same history as I do in terms of being hardcore 3D Realms fans. And I think the games we've been doing, like Rise of the Triad and now Bombshell, are therefore naturally created in the spirit of 3D Realms without us even knowing it. But for us, it's just natural that our characters have to have attitude. The game needs to feel badass. When you play the game and you shoot aliens or enemies and monsters, you need to feel like a badass. I think that feeling, that's the same thing you got from Duke Nukem, you got it from Prey, from Max Payne, from Shadow Warrior. I think that just lies naturally with us, and that's the kind of games we think are a lot of fun to make and play. But we play all kinds of games, strategy, adventure, simulation, and so on.
Even a few mobile games.
Mobile games as well.
So how about you, Scott?
Can you go back one picture? That might be interesting to hear, because that picture and the next picture are like, the beginning and the end. So it might be fun to hear Scott talk a bit about that picture.
Well, I mean, this picture here was from like 1982, I think, and it's when George and I, my partner George, this is way before we started Apogee, but we both worked at a video game arcade, and it was called Twilight Zone, and that's kind of what the background is there. And this picture here was actually taken for a book.
I've never seen that. That is,
this is the book here. It's a book on how to beat, and there's the picture you're looking at. And basically, it's a book on how to beat, how to play all the different video games. Like when you open it up, like here's a page on how to beat Missile Command, and we've got Pac-Man and Asteroids and Defender, Red Baron, just all these old games from the arcade days. George and I wrote a book on on all the strategies and tricks on how to beat these games.
Scott, maybe you need to republish it with all these reboots coming out.
What's the title of the book actually?
But that book is crazy rare. That's why like when he just showed it there on the camera, that book is so rare.
Yeah, there was. Okay, now this picture here.
What's the name of the book, and where to get it from?
Of the entire company, on the day before basically we closed the company down. I think this is like 2008, and we all got sort of like in the lobby where we had the big Duke Nukem logo, and this was like the final day that we all were at the company. Yeah. After this, we shut the doors on 3D Realms, and basically 3D Realms, we sold the Duke Nukem IP to Gearbox Software, and so yeah, the company was just George and I after this for several years, and until we sold it to Mike and Fred in Denmark.
What was the name of the book, and is it possible to get it anywhere?
The book is called Zap the Video Games Shootout, and we had it about, the publisher printed up like 5,000 copies, and I think they sold maybe 1,000. So I don't know, I've only got like 2 or 3 copies myself, and I don't know how to possibly get any others. I doubt you ever find it on eBay or anywhere.
Okay.
Someone has some
Very
gold
rare
in
book.
the store or something.
Exactly.
Right. So we have no more photos actually. So let's talk about your plans. What are your plans for the future? Next to Bombshell, maybe? Any other plans also?
Well, we have quite a few plans. Besides making Bombshell, we're kind of married to Interceptor. So right now, Interceptor is a developer branch of this whole initiative, and 3D Realms is the publishing branch. And we all work together across everything we do. But in terms of 3D Realms, we have a lot of actually great games coming out. It's a really, really tough thing since we have Bombshell coming out, which we feel first published game by 3D Realms, but it's also internally developed by us, Interceptor. But the first non-developed game by 3D Realms to be released is a tough nut to crack. We actually have 3 games coming out that are not developed by us, but are funded and co-developed and managed and so on. A bit like Max Payne and Remedy and Human Head and Prey. We have 3 of those games coming out. It's taken us quite some time finding the right games, because these games will be remembered as the renaissance, the rebirth of 3D Realms. And I know it's impossible to match, the original birth, at least when 3D Realms and Apogee became popular, with Wolfenstein 3D and Commander Keen and Duke Nukem. But at least our goal and aim was to find games that were in development that had the potential to be huge hits, and that also had the same ground philosophies and values as the older 3D Realms games had. There has to be some kind of badass attitude, nature to the games. They have to be somehow have some revolutionary mechanics in there, great graphics, great production qualities, and so on. We have one that we're developing internally that we'll reveal next year, which is kind of spiritual successor to Commander Keen, without saying too much. I said too much.
You said too much, but that's okay.
Yeah, we'll cut that out in the one-live.
No, it's nice.
But we were developing something internally, which would be the game after Bombshell, which is going to be absolutely incredible. And then we're working on a couple of other games with third parties that are also going to be pretty cool. So 3D Realms will serve as the publisher. So we'll continue to find new great partners that we can work with, and publishing great games that fit the style of games that we previously released and what we stand for as a company. And 3D Realms Interceptor will be the developer of the higher tier games, the bigger games such as Bombshell and Rise of the Triad. So that's what the future has in store for us.
Now let me ask you, Scott, how do you see the change of the development of the video game industry? I mean, being such a pioneer and so on, and also kind of historian, I guess, because Bombshell has a different, I think, isometric view compared to 3D, like Duke Nukem 3D or the 2D games that were released in the past. So how do you see the development and the change in the games that are coming from 3D Realms?
Well, I think that 3D Realms has always been a company to try new things. That's, like, for instance, with Max Payne, we didn't come out with a big beefy hero. Max was, more of a slender guy, and we gave him a really cool, unique gameplay mechanic with bullet time, and we did the whole, while everyone else was doing cinematics, we went with the graphic sort of storytelling technique with, the still graphic screens like from a comic book, and then with Prey, we went with the Native American character, so, and then we tried, the portal things with gravity. We tried a new way of handling death with the death walk mechanic. So we're always trying new things. And with Bombshell, we're trying for the first time to sort of blend, a first-person shooter style of gameplay, but from like a top-down viewpoint, and we're throwing in some RPG elements. So, once again, I think we're trying to explore a new area, and that's sort of like that. I think that sort of goal will be something that you'll always see from us. We always want to try and break new ground in some interesting area, and that doesn't mean it's always going to work, but we're willing to try, because if you don't try, then you're never going to really find these new areas that can be really interesting and sort of break out for us. So basically we're always going to try and be innovative in some way. We also like back in the old days, we used to be pretty good at finding really sort of talented developers out there who hadn't really made it big yet. And that's going to be something we're definitely doing in the future here. And Fred's already talked about that. We're with 3D Realms, we're going to try and find new up-and-coming development studios that need that extra little bit of maybe funding, maybe a little bit of we adding our sort of gameplay and marketing expertise, to the game and so on, and really kind of shape the game up, into something special. So, we're definitely looking for projects to team up with. And we'll always have our own internal ideas that we're working on. And you're going to see us also explore areas like in mobile gaming in the future. The game industry, one of the things that you can always count on is that it's always going to change. And mobile market is such an emerging market now, and there's lots of opportunities still there. It's still the very, very early days for mobile gaming, and I think there's lots to explore there, and you're going to see us test the waters in that area too.
Well, the video game industry is full of statements. I mean, if you look recently on recent statements like you would say portable PlayStations are out because the mobile market is so big, or what I heard a lot in the last 10 years was that PC gaming is dead because the consoles will take over, but in the end, none of that really happened.
Yeah, we're always hearing, for 20 years I've heard the PC market's dead. I mean, the PC market, it's TV and film didn't replace radio. Radio's still here. So I feel like the PC market will always be here. The console market will always be around in some form or another. The mobile market is going to always be around. And, now we've got the VR market is going to be an emerging market. So I don't think that any existing market's ever going to disappear. We're just going to see new markets and opportunities open up. And I see that as a good thing because, it's these emerging new markets that keep the whole industry fresh, in my opinion.
Also, you mentioned that you were pioneering or trying new fields and new techniques for games. Do you think there is still something to invent or to find out, or do you think we already have everything out there that is possible?
Well, I would never say that we discovered everything because, as soon as you do, you're going to see a game that shows you that you're wrong. Nowadays, I think we're seeing a lot of blending of genres. So that's an area that I think there's still a lot to do. You're seeing a lot of games like for instance, Borderlands takes the shooter genre and blends it with, a lot of RPG elements. And now you're seeing, the hero shooter genre, which is a blend of various genres. And, like I said, Bombshell is trying to blend some stuff up. So, that's always a direction that you can explore. Now, whether you're going to see a whole new, really cool gameplay mechanic like bullet time, I think something like that is probably a once-in-a-decade type of a breakthrough thing. But I do think that more things like that exist out there that we haven't really maybe discovered. So, I would never say that everything has been discovered. That would be crazy. And I hope that we're one of the companies that discovers one of the really cool things in the future. And we're definitely trying.
What's your opinion about augmented reality and virtual reality? Because that is something I remember, especially virtual reality, that came up when I was a teenager like 20 years ago. And nowadays it's coming up again suddenly this year. Oculus Rift and other classes promising new worlds, better technique, and no motion sickness. So will there be a bombshell where you can actually feel being inside the world? Maybe?
I think that virtual reality and augmented reality, I think that you're going to see more specialized games that really take advantage of those technologies. I think that, it's just like existing franchises didn't really translate well to the mobile market. The games that are doing best on the mobile market are games that were born on the mobile platforms and really take advantage of those devices. So I think that that's the way it's almost always going to go. When VR comes out and augmented reality comes out, I think the games that become the big hits on those devices are games that are sort of like born just for those devices and really take advantage of them. So that's why I like when these new markets come about, is because it really opens the door for something fresh and new to be invented. Lots of innovation, is going to happen. So these emerging technologies are keeping the industry definitely, very interesting, I think.
What are your opinions, Mike and Fred?
I think Scott, hit it on the head. Is that there's still going to be innovations to have, but as we move forward, I think to see the really groundbreaking innovations is going to be, they're going to be further and further apart, obviously. But yeah, I mean, at Nielsen, we're really excited about something like VR. I think we see a lot of potential in that if it's done right. I can't comment to any specific plans about it, but it's at least something that we see a potential in. We've seen some really cool demos. I think just earlier this week we were looking at the Bullet Train demo from Epic, where we're actually playing a first-person shooter, picking up weapons with your hands and shooting and grabbing missiles being shot at you and throwing them back in the head of your enemies. There's definitely some cool stuff to be done there. So, but Fred is here amongst us the expert on what's going on.
Yeah, I think in terms of VR, there's the good thing about Oculus being a Kickstarter project and kind of being a prototype project to get a development platform out to people to experiment with for the past 3-4 years is that you build a base of developers that all come up with ideas for a potential product, but the product itself didn't get developed before the developers had it in their hands, so they could really create great stuff. And during this process, you now see VR taking the next step. So we already reached the step now when the clarity of the image, the ghosting issues, and so on, the refresh rates are all pretty much nailed. And now we're getting to the next step, which is how do we create controllers that work great? And you see both, you see Oculus with their controller, you see Valve with their own, with the Hive together with the HTC with their controller, and I think that's the next logical step together with the audio to get the full experience. But again, something like Bullet Train is an incredible example of an actual viable commercial product that could compete potentially in the AAA console market if it was consumer ready, which it is very, very close to be. So, for us, if we started tomorrow on the next first-person shooter, we would probably aim for a heavy VR version, maybe even VR exclusive of that. Who knows? But it is definitely the future in some genres, and we're seeing the different VR companies slowly perfecting VR to a level where it's actually fun, and it could be a great new contender in the market, just as mobile and consoles and PC and so on. So we're very excited about it. But Bombshell is a different thing. Some games are not meant to be done in VR. There's a lot of games that put in VR as a gimmick, but it's literally putting VR in as 3D glasses. We could put VR in Bombshell, but since Bombshell is isometric, you would literally just have a God view and you could look around. So it would just be 3D glasses. It's not the correct use of VR. VR is a first-person experience. That's the whole goal of being in a virtual reality, is that you play from first person. So racing games, first-person shooters, first-person adventure games, and so on, all work great for VR. But other games might not work that well, and we just want to make sure we don't make it a gimmick. You could play SimCity in VR, but it would still be a gimmick. You would get almost the exact same experience out of having 3D glasses on. You would have the 3D view and you could look around. But as long as it's not first person, it's not the true intention of VR. But it's very exciting.
Okay, well, so as you talked about Bombshell, let's have a look at the trailer that we actually have prepared, I would say.
Flesh is weak.
Squadron Bravo 249, we are under attack.
It burns, it bleeds, it bruises. But we are no longer of the flesh. We are something quite new. I hope you see what you've become.
Yeah. Your worst nightmare. Die, alien scum.
Okay, well that was Bombshell. Very nice.
Yeah, awesome trailer. Really awesome.
Thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to that on my Christmas tree.
Yeah.
So
Looking forward to
actually, from
getting
my that would be all questions that I have for today. Actually, and as Sven just told me, there are no more questions in the chat for now. Is there anything you would like to add that maybe I didn't ask you?
I think we covered it. Just be sure to look out for Bombshell when it comes out. Just
Okay, is there any
shameless
page
product
where
placement.
people can check out the stuff?
Yeah, www.bombshell.com. If you check that out, you will be updating that. Recently, we updated it with the information about the Earth characters and the first planet you visit. It's a multi-universe epic story. Basically, you'll be visiting multiple planets, and we put some information up about the first couple of places you'll visit, and then we'll be updating it with more as we come closer to the release.
And the news will be spread by Twitter, I guess, and other
Yes,
channels?
check out the bombshell_game on Twitter if you want to, and also follow us. Like us on Facebook. We're on all the right places, I think. So.
Great, so I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks to everybody for taking the time, and thanks Scott especially for joining in. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys, and keep in touch.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thanks
Okay.
so much. Well, it's really enjoyable to have you here.
Will be awesome. I'm sure about that.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Cool.
bye.
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 Hi.
Yeah, great. So that was our show with 3D Realms. So our next guest should be Konami. That's planned for the next last Wednesday in October. So thanks a lot. And if you want to join us on the internet and look for more on Scene World, have a look at sceneworld.org. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.